What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Accounting Flow podcast brought to you by Financial Sense. This podcast is dedicated to taking a deep dive into accounting firm workflow and processes. Each episode, we will spend 20 minutes interviewing actual accounting firm owners just like you, uncovering specific processes that firm owners and operators encounter on a daily basis and discuss ways to improve them. Let's go. Right, welcome to Accounting Flow Podcast. Today we have Erica Goode on the show. Erica, how are you?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Super interested to get in on the topic of how you manage a 15-hour work week and the processes that you've set up to manage it well, and be able to spend time in other areas of your life that are very important to you. But tell us a little bit about your background, the firm that you're running now, and how you get into it, who you serve.
Yeah. So my background is pretty, I would say, traditional accounting. I came out of college, did KPMG for a few years, and after that went into corporate finance and accounting over at Walgreens and spent the rest of my, corporate career there. And about, 7 years ago, I had hit the point in my life and our family life where I knew that it was time to go home and just go home and be with the kids. Our kids at that point were 5 and 1. Our oldest was entering kindergarten. And in my corporate career, I had experienced some burnout, and it was really just eye-opening, and it really forced me to reconsider what I wanted to do and what I wanted to do in certain time phases of my life. And that
Mhm.
I knew that I could always go back and be a VP of finance later. And if that's what I wanted, I could always do that later. And I was confident in my ability to do that, but I couldn't always make my kids 5 and 1 again. And so I had to go where the thing that I couldn't make happen again was going to happen. And so I, with mixed emotions, because I loved the work I did, left Walgreens and was just a stay-at-home mom. Because if you are a stay-at-home mom, you know that is a job in itself. But
Two jobs.
but well, then I was doing 3 jobs before that because I was shuffling kids with me. I was just reminiscing about this morning, how I can remember the mornings of waking up at 5:30 and prepping the daycare bags and getting the kids out of school or out of bed and being like, mom has an appointment, or mom has a meeting at 8 a.m. You have got to get in the car. And it was this constant feeling of like, you have to be here now. Like, we don't have time to miss meetings. So like, y'all need to get in the car right now. And I
Mhm.
just felt like I was dragging my kids through this life at 6 a.m., at 4:30 p.m. And it didn't feel right. I didn't like how it felt. And
Mhm.
so, so I chose to do something different, went home, and I did no accounting for 2 straight years and really started to miss it at that point. Not that I didn't miss it. I missed it in there. Like, my husband was getting financial PowerPoint presentations about our personal finances in those 2 years that were like super embarrassing. He's also a CPA. So he's like, wow, this is really great. Trying to be like, okay, what are you doing at home? You're making PowerPoints. I was like, I don't know what to do with my hands. And so I came home, and about 2 years in, I accidentally started a small accounting practice, as we do.
And so you actually missed accounting. That was something that you missed, and
Yeah.
you accidentally started doing your own thing. Did somebody reach out to you and say, "Hey, can you help me?" Or how did that transpire?
Yeah. So our oldest at that point was in a taekwondo class, and the instructor there and the owner of that business was like, you ever have like a personality crush on somebody? You're like, oh, that person's like super cool. Like, I want to, like, I don't know, I just want to talk to that person more. You're kind of that person, Roman. And you're just like, you're just like, oh, I want to like connect with that person. And so I just happened to tell this owner of this business and this taekwondo instructor, I said, hey, if you ever need help in your small business with accounting, I do that. So like, just let me know. And as soon as I said that, she went, yeah, when can we meet? And I was like, oh, oh. Okay, because like I had never seen QuickBooks. I didn't actually know how to get like I knew big Fortune 50 accounting. I didn't
Yeah.
know, uh, you know, a multi six figure accounting and software in that space. And so I quickly had to learn what a QuickBooks was. And I started. That was my first client, just an accidental client. But I was super strict because I had left my corporate career for life balance reasons. I was actually very scared of going backwards and accidentally creating a life that I had decided wasn't right for us right now. And so I had these strict boundaries, still have these strict boundaries where like this was my one client. I wasn't going to tell anybody else that I did this. I wasn't going to
Mm.
market. Like I was only going to work when my kids were at school. Like that was my rule. And as I don't know if you know this, when you have a 3-year-old, they barely go to school. It's like they're in school like maybe 2 hours a week. So I
Yeah.
worked 2 hours a week.
Mm.
And as my kids grew, I allowed my business to grow as much as they were at school. And that's always been my litmus test and my boundary for how much I worked.
And so from the onset, when this Taekwondo instructor says, "Hey, can you help me out?" You then reflect and say, "Hey, I don't want to recreate the scenario that I was in. I want to be very intentional about this. I'm good with 2 hours a week." Did you have the kind of master plan at that point in time to say, "I want to be able to scale that up," or at that point in time, were you just narrowly focused on this 2 hours that I can give?
Yeah, it was all like, what can I do in this 2 hours? And I have to say no to everything else. And I didn't have to say no to anything else because I wasn't telling anybody I had accidentally started a business. Like there was zero marketing for the first 3 years. Like if you found me, it was just because I accidentally said something at a party or something. And so it was always like the next year, then he went to, our littlest went to 4-year-old preschool, and that was 4 hours a week. So I worked 4 hours a week. And eventually they're both in school now full time.
Yeah.
And so I get to work 15 hours a week.
Yeah, so you've scaled 2, 4 gradually up to 15,
Mhm.
which is what you've
Yep.
committed to today. How many clients are you able to serve? It seems like you may be doing some marketing today. Are
Yeah.
you actively filling a pipeline? How do things look and operate today?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of um, great information out there about how to build massive companies on 15 hours a week, like a 4-hour work week, right? If you want to go spend, the year in Brazil. But like to be very clear, I'm pretty much a one-woman show. And so I don't have this
Hmm.
big team behind me doing everything. That's not why I get to work 15 hours. It's me and offshore contractor who also works 10 hours a week because she's a mom too. And, yeah, I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, no, it's interesting to me because I feel like there are a lot of people who desire the professional engagement interaction while also being able to participate fully in their family life, and so you've kind of allowed that capacity to step up to 15 hours. Um, Now, with that time, you have to be tremendously efficient and very focused. And so, how do you think about that? Do you calendar block? How does that tactically work on a week to week basis?
Yeah, until you asked this, I didn't realize the whole cascading process. Like, there is a bigger workflow than I think I even realized before you asked me this.
Hmm.
So, and I did this yesterday, in real life. We're recording this in late September. So yesterday, I have at the end of every month, I have this 4-hour time block. I call it my think session. And especially at the beginning of the quarter, so looking into Q4 right now, I put down all of my priorities for the next 3 months, um, what that would mean for, like, outside the normal course of client work, if there's any admin work I need to do in my business, any new, tech that I'm bringing on, marketing that I'm doing. I just spell that all out, and then I kind of map it out, like, what can I do? What do I think I can do in October? What can I do in November? What can I do December? And that's very real because I know that we're all going to start to check out around the holidays. So that even looks a little different for Q4. So I do that process. And then I really, parse out what am I going to do in the next month. And then at the end of every week, so I work Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. And at the end of every Thursday, I calendar block for the next week. And so if you don't have time on my calendar for next week by Thursday, you can't get it after that because everything's taken. There is no white space on my calendar. Even if it's block, like I'm like placeholder for unknown. But normally it's very specific of I know exactly what I'm going to be doing every day. I don't have to think of it when I sit down at my desk. I sit down, I open up my calendar, and my calendar tells me exactly what I need to do every day and how long I have to do it.
Do you color code your calendar?
Only personal versus business.
Okay.
So I have
Okay.
personal stuff on there too. So I have like
Yeah.
tomorrow I have to go volunteer at school. So I have a different color for things that are
Yeah.
personal.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so when you're bringing on new clients, because I suspect over the past number of years you've had some clients in and out over the years, do you have a specific way in which you communicate with them, your availability, and how they reach you and how they communicate with you?
I mean, I tend to take on clients that only want to email. Nobody, if if you want to call me on the telephone, you are not the right client for me. And so, so we tend to get that out of the way right away. If they're willing to get on Zoom and email, then we're a good communication fit. But I've never had an issue where clients are going to hear from me within 24 hours. Either way, even with that schedule, even if I might check an email on Thursday or, Wednesday when I'm not working. But even
Sure.
if I don't, you maybe emailed me on Tuesday evening and I will get back to you the first thing on Thursday morning. And nobody's ever complained and nobody's ever said they can't get a hold of me.
Yeah, that's good. Because I think one of those things is expectation setting with clients and making sure that they are the right fit, because there may be clients that aren't a good fit for that type of schedule. And so
Mhm.
it's on you to be able to really qualify those
Yeah.
opportunities to make sure they're able to adhere to what you've set out to do.
Yeah, and my background in corporate finance is you are checking your email until 11 p.m. and you are checking your email at 5 a.m. when you wake up. And sometimes I'm going to ask you to wake up in the middle of the night if I send you something late. And so like
Yeah.
I know what that feels like and I wanted to get away from that.
Yep, that makes sense. And so, within this 15 hours that you have, I suspect that over the years you've adopted maybe new technologies or different ways to serve clients better. Maybe say, hey, instead of the three clients I serve today, I can serve four because I've created efficiency on how they operate. Do you have things within the client lifecycle that you say, hey, for every client, we're going to do X or do Y?
Yeah, so I'm only on QuickBooks Online. I only have one software that I personally need to keep up to speed on. And so that is very efficient in of itself. Is um, Niching niching was actually extremely efficient. Like it
Hmm.
creates its own efficiencies. So I'm only marketing in one way. I'm only accounting in one way. I have a standard chart of accounts that works for everybody so that I'm not like, wait, what is this account called in this client versus that client? Like it's always the same words and we put the same vendors in the same accounts every time. Um, but yeah, it's really interesting because I've limited myself to this 15 hours. Like, I think in the past where my career hasn't been necessarily like so strictly limited, it's easy to be like, oh, I'll just log on tonight and do that. Whereas if I'm really strict on those 15 hours and I'm not willing for time to be the solution has to be something else. And it
Mm.
forces me to think of these creative ways of like, okay, because if I can carve an hour out of my week, if I can make something 1 hour faster, that's almost 10% of my week, right? And so
Wow.
these little movements actually go a long way for me. And so as I hit my capacity of 15 hours, I find a new solution. Hit my capacity, find a new solution. And it's this like fun creation of creating something uber efficient.
Yeah. And so within that 15 hours, do you, like you mentioned in your quarterly planning, you have different initiatives beyond just client work. Within the context of a 15-hour week, are you allocating an hour to research tech or to have white space to be able to do some of that creative thinking?
Yeah, so I I track my hours. I do not bill hourly, but because time is so important to me, I actually track how I spend all of my time so that I can see when I need to find an efficiency, where can I find that efficiency? And so about 50% of all of my time is spent on client work, and the other 50% is maybe taking discovery calls or podcast creation or podcast guesting, anything that would fall outside of strictly client work.
Okay. Interesting. Only 50% of your time is on client work. And so you do allow for quite a bit of time to get out there. We met in Scottsdale in April, and after we got to know each other a little bit, I was like, wow, she's working this amount, but also spending her time doing things like this. So you are also investing in community and in marketing initiatives. And I think that's a
Mhm.
really cool balance that
Yeah.
you've struck. And it seems like you're having a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah, yeah. I figure if I was going to start doing something, I better like it, because I think we've all been in situations where we don't like what we're doing, and when you're given the opportunity to create something and build something, you have the opportunity to choose to do what you like to do, and also to say no to the things you don't, and fire clients that are bad, and all that goes into the autonomy of being able to do your own thing.
Yeah. And so have you had to do that, to fire clients that didn't fit the way in which you wanted to serve them? And how did you navigate that conversation?
Yeah. Yeah, I fired my biggest client last year, um, and that was empowering. It was good. It was a long-standing client, probably one of my top paying clients, and it was a huge chunk of my revenue, and it was just one of those situations where the client consistently enough talked to me in a devaluing way. And
Mm.
one day was one day too much, and I hit the button on my 30-day cancellation notice of our contract, and I said, "I'll be signing off at 30 days." And that felt really good. That felt really good to have the power to do that and make that choice for myself.
Good for you. It's hard to do, particularly when there's one material client that makes up a significant amount of revenue. If there is a material impact to your mental
Mhm.
health, your mental well-being, what you set out to do from the beginning, it is so hard to tell people no, but to have the ability to do that like that is a testament to how you've intentionally structured what you want to do and how you want to do it, and then living it out with your clients. Like that
Yeah.
is awesome.
It's really hard to walk away from money. I don't know if that's like that for everybody, but that's not easy for me, and so I've had that experience leaving corporate and leaving a big salary, and making the decision to go from a lot to zero was was really like an emotional, mental process that took me a year to make that decision and to do that, because sometimes we find ourselves putting our worth and our value in our title and our salary and our corner office and all of the things. And so I think once that I was able to work through that mentally and emotionally at one point in my life, it became this now empowerment as opposed to a fear at other parts in my life.
Love that. Love it. So with the process that you've set up to serve clients in the capacity that you're serving them today, I suspect that at 15 hours today, you will begin to have additional capacity as kids, get into school, maybe go off to college one day.
Yeah.
Do you have plans to increase your capacity and take what you've learned with the clients that you've served over the last number of years and apply that to grow into a more of a full-time 40-hour a week thing? Or how do you think about that?
Oh man, I don't ever want to work 40 hours a week again.
There.
No, I don't. Yeah, I don't know what my new full capacity is, right? Because I think there's I don't know, I think there's always space to not fill our lives with work if we are happy with what we're doing in work and we're making enough money to sustain the life we like, then looking for filling hours isn't my goal. Like, I no longer have this like 40-hour metric that is like, well, everybody else is working 40 hours. That's my litmus test. Like, no, it's just what works for whatever season. And maybe in a later season of life, it's 32 hours or 20 hours or 40 hours. I don't know. I enjoy my work, so it could be 40 hours, but I am building systems and processes in mind with if I wanted to increase revenue, how do I do that without working more than 15 hours, like I said before? And it's like a fun math problem to solve, right?
Yeah, ultimately everybody's trying to do more with less time. Time is the most precious asset that's not represented on your balance sheet. And so, to your point of
Yeah.
how that time is spent and the importance for you and your family, um, yet also setting something up that's scalable that allows for opportunity in the future gives you a
Mhm.
lot of freedom and flexibility to grow if you want, to step into different areas. Um, and potentially bring on additional team members.
Yeah, yeah. So I have one contractor right now. Like I said, she's working 10 hours a week and she's wonderful. But if I need to replicate her, right, and bring on another one, like I need to have the processes in place to do that easily. And I can set that up and choose to flip that switch or not flip that switch, depending on
Uh,
what the year looks like.
Yeah, and so are you documenting those processes somewhere, or do you have a repository of this is how we do things, and in the event you do bring somebody else on, you can easily transition that over?
Yeah, we're just starting to do that. I don't have a workflow. I'm in the market for a workflow, but we're starting to create SOPs and using systems to do that. And we have them. It's not where I want it to be, but it's one of those things where I'm like, well, how much can I do in 15 hours? I can do this much, and so we will do this much this week and this much that week, and we will get there when we get there.
Yeah, yeah. And I feel like every single firm runner has something in their mind that could be more efficient, that could be better documented, that they could improve over time. And it sounds like the time that you're dedicating on a weekly basis includes some of these things to maybe become
Hmm.
more efficient. But it might take a little bit longer to implement because you've been so strict on setting time boundaries.
Yeah, I will very proudly admit that I am the slowest growing company ever.
But
uh,
you might be having the most fun.
but I'm having fun. I pick my kids up from school. I get to volunteer. Um, our entire town basically works on a 4-day work week, and so the kids don't go to school on Fridays. My husband doesn't work on Friday, and so like I get to do that. And if that means my processes aren't documented perfectly in the next 2 months, that's fine. We will get there in 5 months then.
Yeah, that's
It's
totally
okay.
fine.
It's a
And do
balance.
you document those in a system? Do you use like Google? How do you
Yeah.
document those?
I've been using Tango. You
Oh,
heard of
okay.
Tango?
Not familiar.
A fellow CPA told me about it, and I checked it out, and it's literally just to make SOPs, and
Huh.
it screen captures you, and as you're
Mhm.
clicking things, it creates boxes around what you're clicking and annotates what you're doing. It guesses. It's pretty good at guessing what you're doing. Like click on, new client button, and it will create an entire um, work document on how to do the thing that you're doing, and then you can just go in and correct it if it got anything wrong, but it's doesn't take long to correct it. So I like paper documents. I know there's a lot of video documentation, but sometimes I just need to scroll fast to the thing and see the thing. So I'm up for paper documentation or word, documentation, not video. And I've been really happy with what Tango has been able to do.
Oh, I love that because in the last episode, I had Corey Knoyer on from Growth Lab, and we were talking about the topic of process in automation. And the very first step there is documenting processes. And
Mhm.
so using Tango is super interesting, and I love that tip. I will be looking that up after this
Yeah.
discussion.
I told my husband about it too, and he's in a corporate accounting role, so he's very different than what we're doing. But I told him about it, and he's like, "Oh," he comes in the next week. He's like, "I think I'm going to use Tango for our SOPs." It's like, awesome.
That's great. Okay, as we wrap up here, there are two more things that I want to hit on with you, and they're kind of one and the same. But you're pretty active on LinkedIn and with your podcast, and there are two things that I admire a lot, want to hear more about. And one, it's you spend a lot of time outside with your kids, traveling, doing all these fun things. And then two, your interest in personal finance and the podcast that you host. Tell us a little bit about those things.
Yeah. So the being outside, I was born and raised Chicago, lived in Chicago or the Chicago suburbs all my life up until 4 years ago when we moved to back. I say back to, but I was moving me for the first time back to my husband's hometown in very rural Idaho, where they are currently harvesting the potatoes. And it is a tiny town, uh, situated in like the most beautiful part of America that you've never even heard of. And so I always say I'm in the Bermuda Triangle of like really awesome ski towns. I'm like right in the middle of Park City, Sun Valley, and Jackson. And so we're in this like rural area that nobody knows about, but we have access to all of these just beautiful national parks and national forests. Like our our house basically lines up to the national forest where there's 2 million acres to go explore whenever you feel like it.
Oh, I love that because it is so important for child development to get grounded, be outside, play with sticks and rocks. And every time I see one of your posts where you guys are outside doing something cool, I'm like, yes, I'm gonna mash that like button, that love button every time. It is so good.
Yeah, so location mixed with we have a 4-day work week in our town. We get 3-day weekends every week, and we get to go explore if we want to, and it's amazing. So I'm not going to
Good.
pass that up.
That's awesome. And then the other side, you said you were doing PowerPoints while you were spending time as a mom before launching. A lot of those are personal finance related. Tell me about kind of
Yeah.
your passion on that side and a bit about your podcast.
Yeah, I've been budgeting and forecasting. So, yes, I'm a CPA. I don't do too much tax. Lots of it is forward-looking finance, and that's what I spent my corporate career doing. I've been budgeting since I was 8 years old to get that first American Girl doll, and I love forward-looking, and I love helping people figure out what they need to save to make their financial goals happen. And
Hmm.
so I do the podcast is focused on my niche, which is coaches and consultants. And so people running anywhere from, I say 20,000 to $2 million consulting firms. So they might be an agency at that point, or they might be a soloist. But I love to sprinkle in personal finance, like how much does it cost to send your kid to college, or what are the cheapest states for college? What does retirement planning look like? And I recruit my husband sometimes for those. We do happy hour episodes where we crack a beer and talk about personal finance.
I love it. And remind me the name of the podcast.
Coaches, consultants, and money.
Perfect. You had an episode on credit card usage. I think it's a Southwest credit
Yeah.
card and how you play that game. That was, it's very simple, but it's very
Mhm.
actionable, practical, personal finance, consultant tips and tricks, and I find a lot of value in that. So
Yeah.
definitely go check that out if you're listening. Super stimulating conversation. Love hearing about how you're doing things and how you're building a very quality life. If people want to find you, how would they find you?
Yeah, I hang out on LinkedIn a lot, Erica Goode CPA. I spend a little bit of time on Instagram, or you can just shoot me a note, find my info on ericagoody.com.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining Accounting Flow today. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was great.
Yeah. For listening in today. If you enjoyed this pod, don't forget to share and write a review. This is going to help other firm owners just like you find our podcast and get insights into how to grow their firm. Stay tuned.